Hello.
Hello. Good
This que-
evening. Welcome to our Friday night Bible study. This is for Friday, October 17,
question
2025.
for you.
Question?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Um. What was my question?
I don't know.
Let me know when you figure it out.
Okay, well, um, this has been for us a kind of a crazy week. And I'm going to show you something here that took up a lot of time this week. And I'm going to lead into it with just a touch of a story. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I made a trip to the dentist for a cleaning and examination. They did a few x-rays and all that, and just routine care. And while I was waiting, I pulled out my phone. Now, I don't normally use my phone a whole lot. I'm at the house, and it's here to some extent just so my wife can call me when she needs help. But, there are things you need phones for. But I'm not one of those who spends a lot of time scrolling on my phone looking for things. And, we have our own computers, so we can do things with computers instead of on the phone, which is mostly what I do. But you don't have your computer with you when you're at the doctor's office or the dentist's office in this case. So I pulled out the phone, was poking through it, and I noticed that it offered an AI tool. Now you've probably heard of AI and seen some of the stuff it can do. We have concluded that a lot of what we see on YouTube is not only read by AI, which we can tell because they mispronounce words like read or read. Well, that depends on the tense, and the readers don't seem to pick up on that. And other things like that come out that say, yeah, this is being read by a machine who doesn't yet have the full context of human speech. And you've probably seen images, very photorealistic images, generated by AI. So I sat there and I played around with it a little bit. And okay, I got a photorealistic picture. It wasn't a picture of me, which is what I'd asked for, but then I guess it didn't have access to my profile photo to know what I looked like, so it just put somebody in its picture. Well, that's okay. It was something to play with. Well, there are a couple of tools available on my computers as they're currently set up. And so I played around with them. And while I was doing so, I had just gone through and installed some things on my newly upgraded computer. And I was looking through them, so I happened to be at a folder full of text files from a project that I started way back in before 20 before the year 2000. So before the turn of the millennium. That's how long ago it was. And so I asked if it could produce some illustrations for it. Well, I had to do it in a couple of sessions because they put limits on the free versions they make available to you. But it did come up with some illustrations. And so let me share this window with you, and then I'll show you just a few things. Whoops, wrong window. That's the one I wanted. There we go. That wasn't the title that I had imagined for my little project. That's what AI came up with. And that's the cover that they designated for it. And if we scroll down through here, you can see there's a rather photorealistic image that it came up with for something, and it came up with others, but then it kind of the quality of what it was generating. There's one of my cliffhangers. That's the cliffhanger at the end of chapter 3. Um, the quality deteriorated a little, so you can see that picture there. That's its imagination of a scene from my little project. And let's go down. I saw one there. Did I? There we go. That's a scene from the thing. Another one. You notice there. This one up here involved a primitive person using snow and leaves to wrap an injured ankle. This tended to hang on to artifacts from previous images when it generated a new image. So you kind of see it there. It wasn't supposed to be in this image, but it put it in there anyway. So
Did it the remedy?
did it what?
Did it work? Did that remedy snow and leaves reduce the swelling?
Well, that's what I imagined. I, you know.
Well, then go out and get some leaves and get in there and treat me.
Oh. um, yeah. Now I had earlier before I did it with this particular tool. I'm not naming the tools so that we don't get commercial in this group. I had asked a different AI tool to produce some images out of. Let's see if I can find a chapter break here. Yeah, that's chapter 10. I need to go a little bit further because those came out of chapter 12. Now there's 11. Not that I didn't put it in the footer. Now there's chapter 12. So, and there's the difference in the images. These were images that I got earlier from a different AI tool. And you can see that's a very different quality of image. And there were three of them because I got it to do, and it picked the scenes it wanted to illustrate from this chapter. There's another one, and there's another one. So I'll go ahead and close that. That's not our focus. It's just I sat up all night one night playing around with that and didn't get to sleep. So now my sleep cycles are totally turned upside down, topsy-turvy, messed up. We'll see if the next week will straighten things out. I did go out and do a little yard work, and there were some trees were growing up inside the flower beds around this house. So I decided I needed to take them out rather than to continue to let them grow there and try to trim them because they don't really form hedges that are trimmable and can look like hedges. So I cut down the first one, and then I spent a little time digging up the stump, pulling it out, carried it over to my yard waste pile over at the corner of the property. And just as I was going back to get the second load, the city's yard waste truck came by. Well, cool, okay. I don't have everything done, I don't have everything there, but that's okay. I took some more stuff over there. Well, actually, it was while I was still walking back, he pulled up beside me and stopped and said, "I'm hauling furniture right now, not yard waste." Well, I said, "That's cool, I don't care." You know, when you get to it, you get to it. I guess he came over later in the day, knew it was there, and you know, the other branches that I'd piled up on it were there, so it was just kind of interesting. He would stop and tell me that, and we have talked before because I had just been piling everything up there, and he said when it comes to leaves and loose stuff, he wanted it in bags so it wouldn't fly out of his truck, and that made sense. So I've been putting that kind of stuff in bags ever since, and he's picked up here several times. Anyway. I hope you don't read the news. It's grim. And we've been reading in the book of Job, and we're about to come to one of the most meaningful passages in the book. Now, we passed one of them last week, and this version reworded it so significantly that I thought maybe that was it, but I wasn't sure. And it's where it says in the King James Version, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Once we get started, I want to talk about that briefly, and then we'll get on into where we left off last week. Which, if I recall correctly, we read chapter 15 and stopped there, so we're ready for 16. So let's go ahead and bow our heads, and then we'll begin with tonight's study. Father in heaven, we thank you for all your blessings to us. And we thank you for all the things that you have made possible for us to use to enjoy life. And we see these opportunities, and we take them, and we enjoy them. Help us as we do so to remember that you have provided these things, and to be grateful to you for all your love and watch care and concern for us. As we open the written word, we want what we read here to lead us to the living word and to a clearer understanding of you and your character. Send your Holy Spirit to give us grace to properly understand what we read. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, I said that I would talk about that verse where Job says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Now, recall that even Job is having trouble grasping the goodness and love and non-destructive, non-violent nature of the God of the universe. He lived in a culture where everything that happened, God did it. And he saw terrible things happen, including the things that had happened to him and his family. Terrible natural violence and human violence and theft and just all sorts of terrible things. And if you're of the worldview that if it happened, God did it, then God does all these things. And that can put a barrier between you and God. But in this case, Job would say, I don't really understand what I'm up against here. But you know what? I'm going to trust God. I think in the end that's going to be the best approach I can take. And even if he should decide that I need to rest in the dust, I'm going to trust that he knows what's best. And I'm going to go along with him. And we look at that and we say, well, no, God's not about to slay you. Well, yeah, but Job was saying, even given my misunderstandings and these reasons not to trust God, still I am going to trust him, which put him in a productive, character-changing relationship with his Creator. And that would lead to the resolution that we see at the end of the book, when God confronts him. And we'll talk when we get there about what God says when God confronts him and how we might understand some of the otherwise odd references that God makes as he confronts Job. And recall that when God gets done, Job says, I repent in dust and ashes. And yet the text then tells us that Job said what was right about God, yet his friends didn't. I think what we can understand is that Job now sees things in a way he never saw them before, and he realizes that some of the cultural baggage that he brought with him into his attempt to understand God was actually causing him to misunderstand God. And so what he repented of was all this baggage that had been brought with him from his culture into his pondering of God and his character. And he is able to look around that and see God and the Creator in all his beautiful character. And, well, of course he would repent and say, I like this view a whole lot better. So, when we read chapter 15, that was Eliphaz the second time around. And you may recall that Eliphaz came down pretty hard on Job, called him a windbag and all this. Well, Job can give as good as he gets. So let's get going here in chapter 16. Then Job spoke again. I have heard all this before. What miserable comforters you are. And there's where we get the term miserable comforters for the three men and ultimately a fourth person who came to commiserate with Job in his troubles. Now, verse 3. Whoa. Won't you ever stop blowing hot air? What makes you keep on talking? There's a condition. It's not a literal condition. It's kind of a this is what it looks like when we see it condition called DOM, and the OM has to do with of the mouth, and the D has to do with uncontained discharges. So you have people who don't seem to be able to be quiet, and we run across them sometime in courts. They can't stop interrupting the judge. Every time something gets said, they've got to give their take on it and their self-justification, and they just blurt it out. Even though it gets them in trouble with the judge, they keep just spewing out of the mouth. And this is kind of the picture that Job's painting. Won't you ever stop blowing hot air? What makes you keep on talking? I could say the same things if you were in my place. In other words, if you were suffering and I came to visit you, I could say all the same things you're saying. I could spout off criticism and shake my head at you. But if it were me, I would encourage you. I would try to take away your grief. Instead, I suffer if I defend myself, and I suffer no less if I refuse to speak. So he's feeling like his friends have got him both ways here. If he says something, they tear apart what he says. If he says nothing, they use his silence against him, which you're not supposed to do in court, obviously. But that's how he's feeling right now, the way they've been relating to him. I can defend myself, but that goes against me. And if I stay quiet, that goes against me. Oh God, you have ground me down and devastated my family. As if to prove I have sinned, you've reduced me to skin and bones. Well, now, you and I know from the prologue, the beginning of this, that God didn't do that at all. That was somebody else doing that. But given his cultural background, that's what he believed. My gaunt flesh testifies against me. God hates me and angrily tears me apart. He snaps his teeth at me and pierces me with his eyes. People jeer and laugh at me. They slap my cheek in contempt. A mob gathers against me. God has handed me over to sinners. He has tossed me into the hands of the wicked. Now, we question these things, but there is a sense in which they are true because God has given the human race freedom, and so he lets these things take place. And to the extent then that he lets it happen, we can say that he did it. Now that's kind of human sophistry, suggests that if you have the power to stop it and you didn't stop it, then you're just as responsible as the one who did it. Cosmically, that's ridiculous. But that's human sophistry. That's how we think, and that's how we give people the power to control people through the threat or even actual infliction of violence.
You want to say something?
Yeah.
I use this as an illustration. I use the story of when my son and I watched our cat playing with a bee, or a wasp rather. And we kept telling her, don't play with that, you're going to get stung. But she didn't pay us any attention. She kept playing with it. And in just a moment, she jerked her head back, ran backwards, and started licking her nose.
Yeah.
She got stung.
Yeah.
Now, did we cause that?
No.
But we knew it was going to happen.
Yep. Going on in verse 12, I was living quietly until he shattered me. He took me by the neck and broke me in pieces. Then he set me up as his target, and now his archers surround me. His arrows pierce me without mercy. The ground is wet with my blood. Footnote A there, my gall. All right, yeah. Again and again he smashes against me, charging at me like a warrior. I wear burlap to show my grief. My pride lies in the dust. My eyes are red with weeping. Dark shadows circle my eyes. Yet I have done no wrong, and my prayer is pure. O earth, do not conceal my blood. Let it cry out on my behalf. Now that verse 18 recalls to us the story that we read in our last sermon presentation about the world's first murder, at least the first recorded murder. And that is when Cain killed his brother Abel. And God confronted Cain a second time and said, look, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So this is the mindset that Job calls on here when he says, O earth, do not conceal my blood. Let it cry out on my behalf. And now comes what I think may be the most important passage in the entire book. And it is, in a sense, the culmination of Job's search for his Creator. Verse 19. Even now my witness is in heaven. My advocate is there on high. Now, in our day and age, we look at that and we say, he's referring to Jesus, our advocate, our intercessor. My friends scorn me, but I pour out my tears to God. I need someone to mediate between God and me as a person mediates between friends. For soon I must go down that road from which I will never return. Well, it doesn't take a lot of interpretive power to know what he means there in verse 22 as he closes off this part of his speech. He needs a mediator, someone between him and God, and he has expressed confidence that his witness is in heaven and his advocate is there in God's presence. How much he understands of that? Well, it's going to get even more clear in future chapters. I thought this was it. I'm wrong, but this is another step in his journey towards understanding his position in the eyes of the Creator. So let's go on to the next chapter, chapter 17. He's going to go on. My spirit is crushed and my life is nearly snuffed out. The grave is ready to receive me. I am surrounded by mockers. Who doubts who he's talking about here? I watch how bitterly they taunt me. You must defend my innocence, O God, since no one else will stand up for me. You have closed their minds to understanding, but do not let them triumph. Now again, Job is still caught up in his cultural mindset that if it happens, God's did it. So these men clearly have their minds closed to understanding. They've got a tradition, they've got ideology, and they're clinging to it, and they are bending reality to match their ideology rather than the other way around. And so they have closed their minds to understanding. They can't see the reality in front of them because of their preconceived ideas and their ideology, which they're going to cling to. It's not God who closed their minds, it's they who have closed their minds through their inordinately elevated opinion of their own intelligence and importance. They betray their friends for their own advantage, so let their children faint with hunger. God has made a mockery of me among the people. They spit in my face. My eyes are swollen with weeping, and I am but a shadow of my former self. The virtuous are horrified when they see me. The innocent rise up against the ungodly. The righteous keep moving forward, and those with clean hands become stronger and stronger. And I don't know, he may be saying this with a hint of irony. They think they're innocent, and they're rising up what they think are the ungodly. So they keep moving forward. They think their hands are clean, and they're becoming stronger and stronger. As for all of you, come back with a better argument, though I still won't find a wise man among you. My days are over, my hopes have disappeared, my heart's desires are broken. These men say that night is day, they claim that darkness is light. What if I go to the grave? I'll bet you that's Sheol, it is. And make my bed in darkness. What if I call the grave my father, and the maggot my mother or my sister? Where then is my hope? Can anyone find it? No, my hope will go down with me to the grave. We will rest together in the dust. Now this sounds pessimistic. He's talking about my death being near. And once my death comes, that's it. There's no hope from there on out. My hope will go down with me to the grave. We will rest together in the dust. Now Bildad chimes in. We're going through our second round of these three. Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, "How long before you stop talking? Speak sense to us if you want us to answer. Do you think we're mere animals? Do you think we are stupid? You may tear out your hair in anger, but will that destroy the earth? Will it make the rocks tremble? Surely the light of the wicked will be snuffed out. The sparks of their fire will not glow. The light in their tent will grow dark." This is their cultural ideology, their understanding. Things go bad for the wicked, but they go well for the righteous. The old, God blesses those who follow him and curses those who don't. That's their thinking. That's their ideology here. The light in their tent will grow dark. The lamp hanging above them will be quenched. The confident stride of the wicked will be shortened. Their own schemes will be their downfall. The wicked walk into a net. They fall into a pit. A tree grabs them by the heel. A snare holds them tight. A noose lies hidden on the ground. A rope is stretched across their path. Terrors surround the wicked and trouble them at every step. Hunger depletes their strength, and calamity waits for them to stumble. Disease eats their skin. Death devours their limbs. Well, he's saying these things. He's saying this is what happens to wicked people, as if it's the truth. And look at who he's talking to. He's looking at somebody who is surrounded with terrors, who feels like a snare holds him tight. He's trapped. Disease eats their skin. Well, he has this condition called boils, and he's using pottery to scrape away the mess. Death devours their limbs. They are torn from the security of their homes and are brought down to the king of terrors. The homes of the wicked will burn down. Burning sulfur rains on their houses. Their roots will dry up and their branches will wither. All memory of their existence will fade from the earth. No one will remember their names. They will be thrust into light, from light into darkness, driven from the world. They will have neither children nor grandchildren, nor any survivor in the place where they lived. People in the west are appalled at their fate. People in the east are horrified. They will say, "This was the home of a wicked person, the place of one who rejected God."
What about the one who acts in the name of the Lord but acts evilly and claims to be doing it in the name of the Lord? As in, remember me, O Lord, for all I have done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Posterity has looked upon him as a righteous person. That's just one example. Abraham tried to kill his own son.
Yeah. Well, Jesus said something interesting in his Sermon on the Mount. He warned them against teachers who would try to tell them lies. He called them false prophets. How did he tell them to distinguish them?
My sheep know my voice.
Well, that's one, but in the passage out of the Sermon on the Mount, what did he say? How were they to tell who would be the false prophets?
The meek shall inherit the earth.
Oh, well, interesting. But actually he said, by their fruits you will know them.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Look at the short-term and long-term results of their ministry. If we look at the long-term results of the ministry of Ezra and Nehemiah, what do we see? We see the Jewish world that Jesus came to. By their fruits you will know them. What is the result? And particularly the longer term results, because people are manipulators. That's just part of what we were created to be. We were created to manipulate our environment, to make it suitable for us and better for the animals with which we co-inhabit the planet. And
They killed their creator.
right. So you've got these humans that are busy manipulating. Well, these false teachers are going to manipulate things in the short run to make their fruits look good.
But doesn't the Bible say something about making them, you teach them something?
You travel over land and sea to gain one convert, and when you've made a convert, you've made him twice the son of hell that you are. Something like that.
Yeah.
Then Job spoke again. How long will you torture me? How long will you try to crush me with your words? You've already insulted me 10 times. You should be ashamed of treating me so badly. Even if I have sinned, that's my concern, not yours. You think you're better than I am, using my humiliation as evidence of my sin. But it is God who has wronged me, capturing me in his net. Footnote A, for I am like a city under siege. All right. And again, I think here the translators have actually inserted something that Job didn't say, making it sound like he's blaming God for this, when in fact he's just saying, I'm in this terrible condition. I cry out, help, but no one answers me. I protest, but there's no justice. God has blocked my way, so I cannot move. He has plunged my path into darkness. He has stripped me of my honor and removed the crown from my head. He has demolished me on every side, and I am finished. He has uprooted my hope like a fallen tree. His fury burns against me. He counts me as an enemy. His troops advance. They build up roads to attack me. They camp all around my tent. My relatives stay far away, and my friends have turned against me. My family is gone, and my close friends have forgotten me. My servants and maids consider me a stranger. I am like a foreigner to them. When I call my servant, he doesn't come. I have to plead with him. My breath is repulsive to my wife. I'm rejected by my own family. Even my young children despise me. When I stand to speak, they turn their backs on me. I wonder if mother had anything to do with that. My close friends detest me. Those I loved have turned against me. I wonder who he's talking about there. I have been reduced to skin and bones, and have escaped death by the skin of my teeth. There's a saying, comes right out of the book of Job, that gets frequently used by people who have no clue where it comes from. Have mercy on me, my friends, have mercy. For the hand of God has struck me. Must you also persecute me like God does? Haven't you chewed me up enough? Oh, that my words could be recorded. Oh, that they could be inscribed on a monument, carved with an iron chisel and filled with lead, engraved forever in the rock. And now the passage I was thinking was going to come earlier. Because now Job reaches the height of his confidence and trust in his Creator. But as for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and he will stand upon the earth at last. Now, he's talked about a mediator several times in the past with an increasing level of confidence. And now we get to these verses, and he's stating it very explicitly and confidently. I know that my Redeemer lives, and he will stand upon the earth at last. And after my body has decayed, King James says, and though worms destroy this body, yet in my body I will see God. And they allow here that it might say, without my body I will see God. The meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. That's how we're used to having it rendered, ours. And the King James says, and though worms destroy my body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. Which is one of the passages used in the resurrection portion of Handel's Messiah. I will see him for myself. Yes, I will see him with my own eyes. I am overwhelmed at the thought. Now, this is a level of confidence that we have not yet seen Job display. But now he's gotten that far. He has continued to contemplate God, and even in light of all the nonsense that's going on, all the terrible things that have happened to him, his quote, friends being miserable comforters, seeing they're shooting arrows at him, he sees confidence that God will redeem him, will fix these problems, will restore him to where he should have been all along. How dare you go on persecuting me, saying it's his own fault? You should fear punishment yourselves, for your attitude deserves punishment. Then you will know that there is indeed a judgment. Now Zophar. Then Zophar the Naamathite replied, I must reply because I am greatly disturbed. I've had to endure your insults, but now my spirit prompts me to reply. Don't you realize that from the beginning of time, ever since people were first placed on the earth, the triumph of the wicked has been short-lived, and the joy of the godless has been only temporary? Though the pride of the godless reaches to the heavens, and their heads touch the clouds, yet they will vanish forever, thrown away like their own dung. Now again, when you look at things in an eternal cosmic perspective, this is true. And it's not true because God says, okay, if you tick me off, I'm going to wipe you out. No, it's true because evil ultimately self-destructs. and would have already self-destructed were not God miraculously sustaining it in order to achieve his goals of redeeming as many of the human race as he can and of demonstrating his character so that this kind of thing will never happen in the universe again. Those who knew them will ask, where are they? They will fade like a dream and not be found. They will vanish like a vision in the night. Those who once saw them will see them no more. Their families will never see them again. Their children will beg from the poor, for they must give back their stolen riches. Though they are young, their bones will lie in the dust. They enjoyed the sweet taste of wickedness, letting it melt under their tongue. They savored it, holding it long in their mouths. But suddenly the food in their bellies turned sour, a poisonous venom in their stomach. They will vomit the wealth they swallowed. God won't let them keep it down. They will suck the poison of cobras. The viper will kill them. They will never again enjoy streams of olive oil or rivers of milk and honey.
Are they politicians?
Are they what?
Politicians?
They will give back everything they worked for. Their wealth will bring them no joy, for they oppressed the poor and left them destitute. They foreclosed on their homes. They were always greedy and never satisfied. Nothing remains of all the things they dreamed about. Nothing is left after they finish gorging themselves. Therefore, their prosperity will not endure. In the midst of plenty, they will run into trouble and be overcome by misery. Again, from a cosmic, eternal perspective, these things are true. But they aren't as true in the temporary sphere as they're trying to make it out to be. In the midst of plenty, they will run into trouble and be overcome by misery. May God give them a belly full of trouble. May God rain down his anger upon them. When they try to escape an iron weapon, a bronze tip arrow will pierce them. The arrow is pulled from their back, and the arrowhead glistens with blood, or with gall. The terrors of death are upon them. Their treasures will be thrown into deepest darkness. A wildfire will devour their goods, consuming all they have left. The heavens will reveal their guilt, and the earth will testify against them. A flood will sweep away their house. God's anger will descend on them in torrents. This is the reward that God gives the wicked. It is the inheritance decreed by God. So, this is it Zophar? Yeah. This is Zophar, and he's saying that God does all these destructive, violent things because he's out there to get the wicked. That's how they thought. That's how a lot of people in our day still think. And they see a natural disaster happen and they assume, well, they must have done something wrong or God would have protected them. Doesn't necessarily follow. Then Job spoke again. Listen closely to what I am saying. That's one consolation you can give me. Bear with me and let me speak. After I have spoken, you may resume mocking me. My complaint is with God, not with people. Well, we know who his complaint is really against, but God is going to let him blame it on God because that's what he understands. And God is big enough to take that and not be insulted by people misunderstanding what's going on. I have good reason to be so impatient. Look at me and be stunned. Put your hand over your mouth in shock. When I think about what I am saying, I shudder. My body trembles. Why do the wicked prosper, growing old and powerful? They live to see their children grow up and settle down, and they enjoy their grandchildren. Their homes are safe from every fear, and God does not punish them. Interesting. Their bulls never fail to breed, their cows bear calves and never miscarry. They let their children frisk about like lambs, their little ones skip and dance. They sing with tambourine and harp. They celebrate to the sound of the flute. They spend their days in prosperity. Then go down to the grave or Sheol in peace. Sheol is the place of the dead, sometimes translated hell, but the meaning in Hebrew is the place of the dead. And yet they say to God, go away. We want no part of you and your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should obey him? And why should we obey him? What good will it do us to pray? They think their prosperity is their own doing. But I will have nothing to do with that kind of thinking. Now, this may be a bit interpreted, because I don't remember anything particularly like that in my readings of this in other versions. But, yeah, people do tend to think that their prosperity is their own doing. I worked hard to get this position, so I deserve to make everybody else do the work while I sit and look at you. That's what they think. And they think it was their effort that got them there. They think their prosperity is their own doing, which means that they don't have to be held accountable for other people doing the work and them getting the benefit. Yet the light of the wicked never seems to be extinguished. Job's talking about what he's seen. He's seen the wicked get away with all sorts of things and seemingly untouched. Do they ever have trouble? Does God distribute sorrows to them in anger? Are they driven before the wind like straw? Are they carried away by the storm like chaff? Not at all. Well, you say, at least God will punish their children. But I say, he should punish the ones who sin so that they understand his judgment. Well, what does God reiterate in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18? The people were saying the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. And God said, that's not how it is. He says, the one who sins is the one who will die. And so essentially he's agreeing with Job. Job is saying he should punish the ones who sin so that they understand his judgment.
Define sin?
Well, I think since Job's saying it, we have to understand sin from Job and his buddies' perception, which is they're probably imagining some action you take that gets defined as sin. But yeah, you're right. Sin is living your life apart from your Creator.
If you sever from the branch that gives life,
right,
you're going to die.
Let them see their destruction with their own eyes. Let them drink drinkly of the anger of the Almighty. Now see, he's still buying into this God's wrath thing. For they will not care what happens to their family after they are dead. But who can teach a lesson to God, since he judges even the most powerful? One person dies in prosperity, completely uncomfortable and secure, the picture of good health, vigorous and fit. Another person dies in bitter poverty, never having tasted the good life. Both are buried in the same dust, both eaten by the same maggots. It's a colorful language here to say ultimately reality recognizes the fundamental equality of all human beings before their Creator. If you die with billions of dollars on your account books, or if you die hundreds of thousands in debt, what happens to your body after you're dead is exactly the same thing for both. So nature recognizes our fundamental equality before our Creator. And all these inequalities that we imagine amongst ourselves are just that. They're just imagination. And yeah, they affect the reality of people's lives because we manipulate things to benefit those that we think deserve it and to harm those we think deserve the harm. But once death comes, everything's equal. Look, I know what you're thinking. I know the schemes you plot against me. You will tell me of rich and wicked people whose houses have vanished because of their sins. But ask those who have been around, and they will tell you the truth. Evil people are spared in times of calamity and are allowed to escape disaster. No one criticizes them openly or pays them back for what they have done. When they are carried to the grave, an honor guard keeps watch at their tomb. A great funeral procession goes to the cemetery. Many pay their respects as the body is laid to rest, and the earth gives sweet repose. How can your empty cliches comfort me? All your explanations are lies. Now we've done it twice around, we're starting a third time around. Eliphaz again. Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied, can a person do anything to help God? Can even a wise person be helpful to him? Is it any advantage to the Almighty if you are righteous? Would it be any gain to him if you were perfect? Is it because you're so pious that he accuses you and brings judgment against you? No, it's because of your wickedness. There's no limit to your sins. Now, I find it interesting that he throws in verse 3 here, because I think there's truth to that. And it's a truth we should understand to help us get out of our transactional mindset in our relationship with God. So we go about and we start behaving righteously. And even if we get to the point where we think we're perfect, how does that help God? How is God benefited when we do good things? Well, the people around us are benefited, and since God loves all humanity, any good thing that we do to any single member of humanity, God takes it as if we did it to him, for him. Jesus said that. Inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these brothers of mine, you have done it to me, or you have failed to do it to me in the alternative.
You know what I'm thinking of?
What?
I cannot remember her name, but for a while her name was a common household word. She was a county clerk who followed the teachings of her church and refused to do her job by granting equal rights to those who had a different belief than what she did. She refused to grant marriage license to same-sex couples. Now, I'm not going to get into the argument whether or not same-sex relationships are correct or incorrect. That's not the point. The point is, she failed to exercise toward the other people God's love. What she did was exhibit her own selfishness because she was focused on what was going to happen to herself, not caring about how she was representing God to the people that needed to know about God.
Now, in the past, Job has told these men, why don't you tell me what I've done wrong? So now Eliphaz is going to try, but let's pay attention to how he says it. For example, you must have. He's not saying you did this. He's not bringing evidence that Job did this. He's just saying you must have done something like this. Lent money to your friend and demanded clothing as security. Yes, you stripped him to the bone. You must have refused water for the thirsty and food for the hungry. And in the Middle East at that time, hospitality was a very important cultural value because that's how travel was possible. You probably think the land belongs to the powerful and only the privileged have a right to it. You must have sent widows away empty-handed and crushed the hopes of orphans. Again, he's not going to come up with any evidence. He's not going to come up with any clear examples. He's just going to throw accusations out there and, kind of like, the political mudslinging, throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and look at what sticks. You must have sent widows away empty-handed and crushed the hopes of orphans. That is why you are surrounded by traps and tremble from sudden fears. That is why you cannot see in the darkness and waves of water cover you. God is so great, higher than the heavens, higher than the farthest stars. But you reply, that's why God can't see what I'm doing. How can he judge through the thick darkness? For thick clouds swirl about him and he cannot see us. He's way up there walking on the vault of heaven. Now, I don't know that I specifically read Job saying something quite as out there as what Eliphaz is attributing to him, but anyway. Will you continue on the old paths where evil people have walked? They were snatched away in the prime of life, the foundations of their lives washed away. For they said to God, leave us alone. What can the Almighty do to us? Yet he was the one who filled their homes with good things. So I will have nothing to do with that kind of thinking. The righteous will be happy to see the wicked destroyed, and the innocent will laugh in contempt. Verse 19. Sounds like it informed Charles Dickens when he wrote his Christmas Carol. And he described the scene where the people of the town are celebrating gleefully as the casket of Ebenezer Scrooge passes by. They will say, see how our enemies have been destroyed. The last of them have been consumed in the fire. Let me tell you a little secret. Truly righteous people do not gloat at the distress, trouble, and destruction of the wicked. It saddens them. And that's why in the book of Revelation, it doesn't say anything about God wiping away all tears from their eyes until after the destruction of sin and wickedness. Because God knows.
I once heard that put a different twist on the day that Jesus returns to get his people. But we're taught that it's going to be a happy, joyful day. But this guy was teaching that it would be a day of great sadness and a lot of tears, because for people to realize that their loved ones are missing, it's going to break their hearts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think, didn't we read that a while ago that you're saying it's going to be a great day, but it won't. It'll be a day of distress and sorrow.
I remember hearing Greg Boyd talking to his parishioners, telling them that they need to start preparing their hearts for the loss of people that they love, because not everybody's going to make it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't love them.
Now, one of the strategies for denying reality that we discussed in the presentation we developed out of the book of Job on that subject drew to this passage right here. And the strategy was to state obvious truths as if they support your position. And so now Eliphaz is going to draw on that strategy. He's going to tell Job, good things will happen to you if you do this. And he's going to use some statements of obvious truth. Verse 21, submit to God and you will have peace. Then things will go well for you. Listen to his instructions and store them in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. So clean up your life. If you give up your lust for money and throw your precious gold into the river, the Almighty himself will be your treasure. He will be your precious silver. Well, okay, all these things are true. How are you going to link that to what Eliphaz has been saying? Well, Eliphaz doesn't bother. He just keeps going. Then you will take delight in the Almighty and look up to God. You will pray to Him and He will hear you. Guess what? I don't care who it is, when it is, where it is. You pray to God, He hears you. He may not give you the answer you want. He may not even give you an obvious sense of His presence. But if you cry out to God, He will hear you. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, or what your situation is, where you are. If you cry out to Him, He hears.
Mary.
I gathered you might want to say something about that, but the phone cut you off. Try again.
You don't need an intermediary. Is that the right word?
An intercessor, intermediary, yeah, that's a good word for it. I thought maybe you were going to talk about your experience of crying out to God and not feeling that He was hearing you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was dealing with extreme depression, debilitating depression where I couldn't function. And when I finally decided, okay, you don't want to have anything to do with me, but I'm not letting go of you, that's when I began to come out of the depression. And I found out that it was the antidepressant that they had me on that was causing the depression.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you a question. As you look back on that time, even when you didn't think He heard you, even when you didn't think He was with you, can you now say, yes, He heard you?
Yes, He heard me. Absolutely, He heard me. And He didn't just hear me. He was there holding me, keeping me going. I didn't pull the plug. I wanted to so badly, but He kept me going. And it was clinging to Him that got me through it.
Sounds like a version of footprints in the sand.
Maybe.
You will pray to... You were going to say something?
You remember I was anointed? And what happened that night when I was anointed? I got so sick that I couldn't even eat. And it was a struggle. My dad brought me, I thought maybe I could eat just the small hamburger from McDonald's, but I didn't want anything on it. So my dad went and got it for me, and it took me, I think, about 3 hours to eat the thing, and I had to force it to get it down. And I ended up being anointed. And during the prayer, it was when Brian Ransom had his hand on me, praying over me, that I realized that I was going to be able to eat. And as soon as they left, I asked you if we had something, and we did, and I ate something. You know, I was still up and around and could get my own food, but I was able to eat, I think, maybe a half a bowl of cereal. Maybe. I got over it and was able to recognize that it was the medication that was causing it. Because I got a phone call that night. My son had called a friend of his in another state and asked what's wrong with my mom. And he told him that I was having a reaction to the medication I was taking. So I got a phone call right after everybody left, quit taking the medication. And I got over it, though I never fully recovered from the damage it did to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like God was all in there with me all the way through that.
Even though there were times in the middle of it that you didn't feel that way.
Oh no, I was torn up, just in agony because I couldn't find him. I couldn't reach him. Actually, I was probably blocking him.
Yeah. Well,
It was. I don't want to do that again.
no. Well, maybe that once you've done it, you don't need to again.
You know, and I'm wondering. I'm not remembering well enough. Isn't there a teaching somewhere about it's darkest before the dawn?
Yeah.
And once you get through the darkest night, that you don't have to go through it again because dawn is there. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know.
Well, that is a principle that people mention, and it has been used to talk about the condition of earth just before the second coming. And I think it's what's the song? I don't even know who wrote the song. Never give up. Jesus is coming. It's the darkest just before dawn. Let's read these last few verses and then we can move on to the next chapter. Again, this is Eliphaz, and what we pointed out is he's saying some things that are obviously true, as if somehow that supports the position he's been holding so far throughout this book. Then you will take delight in the Almighty and look up to God. You will pray to Him and He will hear you, and you will fulfill your vows to Him. You will succeed in whatever you choose to do, and light will shine on the road ahead of you. If people are in trouble and you say help them, God will save them. Even sinners will be rescued. They will be rescued because your hands are pure. Well, some of that isn't obvious true. Some of that's human arrogance, I think. But at any rate. Now Job responds to Eliphaz, chapter 23. Then Job spoke again. My complaint today is still a bitter one, and I try hard not to groan aloud. If only I knew where to find God, I would go to His court. I would lay out my case and present my arguments. Then I would listen to His reply and understand what He says to me. Would He use His great power to argue with me? No, He would give me a fair hearing. Honest people can reason with Him. Come, let us reason together. So I would be forever acquitted by my judge. I go east, but He's not there. I go west, but I cannot find Him. I do not see Him in the north, for He is hidden. I look to the south, but He is concealed. But He knows where I am going. And when He tests me, I will come out as pure as gold. For I have stayed on God's paths. I have followed His ways and not turned aside. I have not departed from His commands, but have treasured His words more than daily food. But once He's made His decision, who can change His mind? Whatever He wants to do, He does. So He will do to me whatever He has planned. He controls my destiny. No wonder I'm so terrified in His presence. When I think of it, terror grips me. God has made me sick at heart. The Almighty has terrified me. Darkness is all around me, thick, impenetrable darkness everywhere. And now I think, if I recall correctly, since Eliphaz spoke a third time, Eliphaz is the only one who speaks the third time, So from now on out for a ways, we're going to hear from Job before we get to Elihu. Chapter 24. Why doesn't the Almighty bring the wicked to judgment? Why must the godly wait for him in vain? Maybe because they're waiting for something that God doesn't provide. Evil people steal land by moving the boundary markers. They steal livestock and put them in their own pastures. They take the orphan's donkey and demand the widow's ox as security for a loan. The poor are pushed off the path. The needy must hide together for safety. Like wild donkeys in the wilderness, the poor must spend all their time looking for food, searching even in the desert for food for their children. They harvest the field they do not own, and they glean in the vineyards of the wicked. All night they lie naked in the cold without clothing or covering. They are soaked by mountain showers, and they huddle against the rocks for want of a home. The wicked snatch a widow's child from her breast, taking the baby as security for a loan. The poor must go about naked without any clothing. They harvest food for others while they themselves are starving. They press out olive oil without being allowed to taste it, and they tread in the winepress as they suffer from thirst. The groans of the dying rise from the city, and the wounded cry for help. Yet God ignores their moaning. Now this is Job coming to grips with the reality that he has seen. He has seen the poor oppressed by the wicked rich. He has seen all this misery and suffering in the world around him. And why shouldn't he? If, as we believe, he was king of Edom, then he would have seen what was going on in his country and in surrounding countries. As king of one of them, as chief executive of his country, he would have been familiar with what was going on in other countries as well. So he would have seen these things, and he would have had the impression that God ignored them. Wicked people rebel against the light. They refuse to acknowledge its ways or stay in its paths. The murderer rises in the early dawn to kill the poor and needy. At night he is a thief. The adulterer waits for the twilight, saying, "No one will see me then." He hides his face so no one will know him. Thieves break into houses at night and sleep in the daytime. They are not acquainted with the light. The black night is their morning. They ally themselves with the terrors of the darkness. And now he's going to agree with his friends in another vein. But they disappear like foam down a river. Everything they own is cursed, and they are afraid to enter their own vineyards. The grave, or Sheol, consumes sinners, just as drought and heat consume snow. Their own mothers will forget them. Maggots will find them sweet to eat. No one will remember them. Wicked people are broken like a tree in the storm. They cheat the woman who has no son to help her. They refuse to help the needy widow. God, in his power, drags away the rich. They may rise high, but they have no assurance of life. They may be allowed to live in security, but God is always watching them. And though they are great now, in a moment they will be gone like all others, cut off like heads of grain. Can anyone claim otherwise? Who can prove me wrong? So Job here takes a healthy dose of bitter reality. And he's challenging his friends. Can you prove that I've said something that doesn't comport with the reality around us? Oh, Bildad again. Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, God is powerful and dreadful. He enforces peace in the heavens. Who is able to count his heavenly army? Doesn't his light shine on all the earth? How can a mortal be innocent before God? Can anyone born of a woman be pure? God is more glorious than the moon. He shines brighter than the stars. In comparison, people are maggots. We mortals are mere worms. All right, Bildad, wonderful, flowery words. They sound truthful. But what's the point? And we find this interesting. How can a mortal be innocent before God? Well, we're humans. we're born into a race trapped in sin. So we're born trapped in sin. That's our condition. That's our reality. And so, no, we can't be innocent before God because God sees our brokenness. But again, Bildad, what's your point? You say all these wonderful things. How does that apply to the discussion? Job's ninth speech, response to Bildad. Then Job spoke again. How you have helped the powerless. How you have saved the weak. How you have enlightened my stupidity. What wise advice you have offered. Where have you gotten all these wise sayings? Whose spirit speaks through you? Now, if that's not sarcastic, I don't know what is. Anyway, the dead tremble, those who live beneath the waters. The underworld, or Sheol, the place of the dead, is naked in God's presence. The place of destruction is uncovered. That's the Hebrew Abaddon. And Abaddon is, we read it in the book of Revelation, Abaddon and Apollyon, destroyer. So, yeah, the place of destruction. Destruction is uncovered. God stretches the northern sky over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. It's almost like Job had been to the moon and seen those scenes that we have from the pictures of our astronauts. The earth, the blue orb, hanging, nothing connecting it to the space around it. It's just there. Hangs the earth on nothing. He wraps the rain in his thick clouds, and the clouds don't burst with the weight. He covers the face of the moon, or he covers his throne, shrouding it with his clouds. He created the horizon when he separated the waters. He set the boundary between day and night. The foundations of heaven tremble. They shudder at his rebuke. By his power the sea grew calm. By his skill he crushed the great sea monster. Footnote D, Rahab, the name of a mythical sea monster that represents chaos in ancient literature. So again, we're seeing here references as if even Job himself is beginning to catch on that there are cosmic powers of chaos that the Creator keeps in check. So, by his power, the sea, that place of chaos, grew calm. By his skill, he crushed Rahab, the great sea monster. His spirit made the heavens beautiful, and his power pierced the gliding serpent. These are just the beginning of all that he does, merely a whisper of his power. Who then can comprehend the thunder of his power? Then he goes on. I vow by the living God who has taken away my rights, by the Almighty who has embittered my soul, as long as I live while I have breath from God, my lips will speak no evil and my tongue will speak no lies. I will never concede that you are right. I will defend my integrity until I die. I will maintain my innocence without wavering. My conscience is clear for as long as I live. Now, we generally teach people to never say that you're sinless, to never boast that you are saved, to understand that you have never reached it, that it's not a destination, it's a journey, and we're always journeying towards better reflecting the character of the Creator. But I think maybe this is being said in a different context, and so it is in that context that Job maintains his innocence and has a clear conscience. May my enemy be punished like the wicked, my adversary like those who do evil. For what hope do the godless have when God cuts them off and takes away their life? Will God listen to their cry when trouble comes upon them? And again, he sounds here like he's reflecting the thoughts and ideas of his three miserable comforters. Will God listen to their cry when trouble comes upon them? Can they take delight in the Almighty? Can they call to God at any time? I will teach you about God's power. I will not conceal anything concerning the Almighty. But you have seen all this, yet you say all these useless things to me. Yeah, useless. I'm just spouting words now. They don't want to have to admit that they're wrong, so they just keep piling words on top of words as if somehow that's going to help.
You know, it might be a case of God does hear them, and He's willing to help them, but they won't let Him.
Yeah, probably so.
Because He's not going to do it the way they want Him to do it.
Like the woman we were talking about last night. This is out of Mesa County, Colorado, which is the county in which Grand Junction is located. And plaintiff was there asking the judge to issue an order to prevent this woman from filing pro se briefs and motions with the court, because they force other people involved in litigation with her to waste money on lawyers' efforts to deal with these things, and they're meaningless. They don't lead to any decisions in her favor, and they just make these people spend money they don't have. He gave the example of there was a plumber who had a lien against her. A lien. It's called a mechanic's lien against her house. Okay, you owe me X amount of money. I have this lien against your house until you pay me for it. And so that's in the courts. Well, they got a $20,000 lien, but lawyers are expensive. And if she just keeps throwing paper at the court and their lawyers have to respond to this, they'll burn through that $20,000 and more. Well, what has the company gained then? So it's a strategy of, and as I listened to what she had to say, I got the impression that she is so convinced that she is right, that even though the court says you're wrong, she just keeps trying and trying again because she's convinced she's right. So this is right, I'm going to do it again until I get what I want. And if the court has already deemed it's wrong, it's probably never going to do that. But, the definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, that's what it kind of sounded like to me was going on there. So, yeah. And I forgot what got me set off on that. We're reading something here that Job is saying that seems to agree with what his miserable comforters have been saying to them. For what hope do the godless have when God cuts them off and takes away their life? Will God listen to their cry when trouble comes upon them? Can they take delight in the Almighty? Can they call to God at any time? I will teach you about God's power. I will not conceal anything concerning the Almighty. But you have seen all this, yet you say all these useless things to me. This is what the wicked will receive from God. This is their inheritance from the Almighty. They may have many children, but the children will die in war or starve to death. Those who survive will die of a plague, and not even their widows will mourn them. Evil people may have piles of money and may store away mounds of clothing, but the righteous will wear all that clothing, and the innocent will divide that money. The wicked build houses as fragile as a spider's web, as flimsy as a shelter made of branches. The wicked go to bed richer, but wake up to find that all their wealth is gone. Terror overwhelms them like a flood, and they are blown away in the storms of the night. The east wind carries them away, and they are gone. It sweeps them away. It whirls down on them without mercy. They struggle to flee from its power, but everyone jeers at them and mocks them. And again, these are the words of Job, and yet he seems to be agreeing with his friends that God does terrible things to those who are wicked. And I'm just going to scroll through here a little bit. Yeah, I think this is it. So it's Zophar who doesn't get hurt a third time, because here's chapter 30, Job's still speaking. Chapter 31, Job's still protesting his innocence. Chapter 32, Elihu responds. I just wanted to go through there because, right now we're looking at we just finished chapter 27 here. So he seems to be agreeing with his friends, but maybe that's because he's speaking from an eternal cosmic perspective. Ultimately, God will let nature take its course. The laws by which he governed the universe will be allowed to reach their natural end, and all those who lived in toxic ways will find their own toxicity destroying themselves. And so that may be the sense in which Job speaks of this. So to us, it sounds like he's saying the same thing, but there may be a sense in which he's speaking from a different perspective than they are, so that what he says bears the weight of reality that their speeches do not. So, we are ready for Job chapter 28. I think we finished chapter 14 last time. This is our third week in Job, so we did make quite a bit of a rush through it. And it's likely that next week we'll do through the rest of Job and through Elihu. And then we'll have a week to examine what God has to say at the end of the book. So I'm not saying that's how it'll happen. I'm saying that's how it might happen. That's a possibility. So, given the time and how long we've already spent at this, I think we've worn things out long enough, and it is time for us to say goodbye and invite you to join us again next week, 6:30 Central Time, when we will again take up the book of Job and ponder what these men have to say. And until next week, then, we say goodbye and God bless.